It's a not so well kept secret that when AMG does its design meetings, that they use a kind of talking stick to visually denote who is responsible for the card they're currently working on. This talking stick is actually a hat, and I recently snuck into their office to borrow it. And just for today, I will be acting as the king of Marvel Crisis Protocol. And today, I will be redesigning the Infinity Stones. I've chosen the Infinity Stones because I think they're largely a problem and a source of friction. I know a lot of people are complaining about Thanos at the moment, but I think these are a kind of like unloved piece of Marvel that has been redesigned and kind of struggling to find its natural home or its correct design power level to both make an impact on a game but not take over the game. So, for each one of these, we're going to talk about what the card does, why it's a problem, and then we'll talk about what my redesign does, how it addresses those problems, and how I think it fits the theme of it. So let's start off with the Power Gem. The Power Gem currently gives 2 extra power a turn. It's generally a very boring effect. It competes with the Soul Gem, which also grants power in kind of a more interesting way. It also really, I feel like it only gives power because its name is the Power Gem. That's not typically what it's represented doing in like the movies or the comics. Usually it just makes the character stronger. So with that in mind, I'd like it to be some kind of damage increase. So we're going to give it a terrain throw. We can't really give it a character throw because then it would directly compete with the Mind Gem. So in my example here, I have the Power Gem, 3 power cost, choose an interactive terrain feature of size 3 or less, and within 3, and throw it medium. The superpower can only be used once per turn. So we're giving it kind of an expensive rate. Now, granted, on Thanos, I'm not redesigning Thanos. Thanos is still going to use the gems for free. So this very good terrain throw. This does really increase Thanos' power, gives him a personal power dump, which will make it very enticing to him over something like reality, and meaningfully increases his damage. I'm a little bit worried about that. I also think it has interesting implications on both Ronan and Star-Lord. Star-Lord, I think this Star-Lord can struggle because on Ronan, it really can up his damage. So now when he's a 5 threat, he really does actually do an unbelievable amount of damage if he can get the power to function or to run this. And that is kind of where the bottleneck is for Ronan. Ronan often took the Power Gem just to be able to put more judgments out. It's sad to lose that, but Power Gem does give you more power because every gem gives you 1 more power. But I think it's just a much stronger effect. I think it's interesting on Star-Lord. At first blush, I think it seems like very, very strong on Star-Lord as a medium range throw on a hidden run character means that he could walk, throw, hidden run away, but that's having to have 5 power at the opener of the turn. And also it locks Guardians to a 4 threat leader instead of a 3 threat leader, which is where a lot of their strength comes from. But I think it's strong enough to give you an incentive to at least try it. Next up is the Soul Gem. The Soul Gem gives power when opponents use active and reactive superpowers while within 4 of the character holding the gem. It doesn't see play because it competes with the Power Gem. So anytime you're looking for power, you typically go with the Power Gem because the Power Gem is more consistent, has no range requirement, and gives you power for shenanigans on turn 1. I think the range can also really make you overextend with the Power Gem, stand within range of characters that can now interact with you when you shouldn't because you're chasing more power. The effect is overall just like very weak and also has competition. To solve this, I've kept its power generating requirement and I've just pulled the range from it. This is probably the weakest gem of the group that I've designed here. I think that it's a thing that you could maybe look at. I think it's hard to make it stronger and keep it in the same like vein of stuff that it does. I like that it has this kind of, it doesn't enable turn 1 stuff more than any other gem unless your opponent is also doing turn 1 stuff. It can create this kind of like Ghost Rider-esque feeling of like Ghost Rider unlocks his ability to like move faster and do more damage if they're moving faster or if they're doing damage to your models. This is you get to use your superpowers and do your turn one shenanigan stuff if they're doing turn one shenanigan stuff with their superpowers. And also it being the soul gem and having that like mechanical link to Ghost Rider, I think is very thematic and a reason that I want to keep the soul gem kind of doing what it does. But I am concerned that this is probably the weakest of the gems. It does make it fairly interesting on, I believe, Strange and Thanos are the only carriers of the soul gem at the moment. So, yeah, I think that's pretty interesting. Next up is Reality. Reality is the first skull you roll is treated as a crit. This is just hands down the strongest gem in the game. It makes you more durable, you deal more damage, you're better at scenario because, again, on pay-to-flips, the skull counts as a crit, so you hit pay-to-flips on 5 faces instead of 4 faces. Can enable you to pay-to-flip over people. It also makes you less susceptible to the bad side of pay-to-flips, like you essentially, it's like borderline impossible to get placed by spider portals while you're holding the reality gem. And it's also currently the only gem that is innate and has no, well, it's not the only gem that's innate, but it's the only gem that has an effect that isn't power generation that is free. So we're changing it to when rolling dice as part of attack or defense, this character treats one skull result as a crit result. The superpower can only be used once per turn. So we're making it once per turn. We are also pulling its ability to make you better at dodges and its ability to make you better at pay-to-flips. It's much more in line with things like Domino and Malekith. It also removes a bunch of its really dumb, hard-to-explain interactions with other cards like Recal. You know, like, because Thanos, when currently with the Reality Gem, if you have the Reality Gem and you roll 2 skulls and you Recal, you can't re-roll one of the 2 skulls because of Recal. And then as soon as you roll, that skull is already a crit because it's your first skull. That would remove these type of shenanigans. Any kind of mod on the dice would pull the trigger from the dice, just the way that it does with Malekith and Domino. And I think this makes it not the hands down strongest gem. I think there actually is a legitimate concern that it makes the gem too weak. If that's the case, I would look at either pulling the once per turn or putting the dodge result back on the gem. But for now, this is where I want to leave it. Reality has been kind of a dominant force its entire existence. So I think taking it down a peg would be a welcome change to everybody. All right, next up we got the Space Stone. Space Stone lets you teleport yourself or a friendly within 3, and you teleport yourself 2 once per turn. The reason there's a problem is it grants an extra action to the bearer. It like gives them a movement ability on characters that normally don't have those abilities. This creates safe grabs, but it also, more importantly, is single-handedly the gem that's breaking Thanos. This is the reason that Thanos is broken, is because Thanos becomes uncontrollable. Normally, if Thanos doesn't have access to the Space Stone, Thanos being pushed or thrown is kind of the apocalypse for him, because when an 8 threat or even a 7 threat character has to take a movement action, so half of their turn is taking a movement to get back on a scenario point, it's a disaster. Now Thanos can still interact with the game via portal, or if he also brought, the Mind Gem, he can move people around with the Mind Gem. So it's hard to make Thanos unable to interact with the game, which is totally fair. He does cost a ton of threat. But the fact that he essentially is a 3-action character when he's taking the Space Gem means that there are very little solutions to dealing with him. I think fixing this one little change fixes a bunch of the problems with the gems and also makes which gem you play on Thanos a much more interesting topic, which is ultimately the goal of Thanos. Thanos isn't a character that plays the Space Stone and then either the Reality or the Mind Stone, and none of the other stones exist. And really, the vast majority of the time, he just plays Space and Reality. I think I want him to be much more of a, like, which version of Thanos are you playing? There's so many different cool ways the character really transforms based on which gems you put on him, and he doesn't just transform from broken to terrible. So, to solve this, you no longer can teleport yourself. This solves all the issues while leaving the gems still very interesting. I think we've all we've all seen how strong Field Leader can be as a tool on Cyclops. This is a much weaker version of Field Leader, but I still think it's very cool. I think that we are also still running the risk of this being the weakest gem. I would want to playtest this a bit, and if that's the case, I would be interested in doing one of increasing its range to allied characters, making it range 4 to allied characters, or pulling its once per turn effect. Thanos spiking into a bunch of power and being able to rearrange all his guys, but not your guys, does sound very, very strong, which is why I did not do that. But it is on my watch list of maybe I made this too weak compared to the other ones. All right, the Mind Gem. The Mind Gem currently grants 2 power for a bow style effect, which is pay 2 power, pick a character within 3, move them short. Why is the Mind Gem a problem? It's not. This is the gem that's everything else is balanced against. I think that the Mind Gem is very well designed. I think it has been the best designed since the game's inception. It's very powerful, yet very fair. So we're not changing this one. We're leaving it exactly how it is. I like it a lot. Lastly, we have the Time Gem. The Time Gem used to be one of the most broken gems in the game. It also used to cost 2. It used to just give you another action. They errated it, and they smacked it down really, really hard. Time Gem costs 2 when this character is attacking. Before the calculate success or failure step at the end of the modify dice step of the attack, it may use this superpower. The attacking and defending character reroll all of their attack and defense dice, including skulls. So it's like very last step, reroll both players' dice only when the character holding the gem is attacking. This is a problem because it is just like very, very weak. It is like hands down the weakest gem. And to make matters worse, there's 2 characters. At the time of writing, there were 2 characters. There's now a third. But Strange can already kind of do this. He can reroll all of his own things. And all of the time mechanics are reroll based. So I get why they kept in reroll. It going like very late in the dice mod process does give you that like rewind time feeling. But I don't know. It's a gamble. And I just think it's just like not worth its threat. So I have redesigned it to be Disruption Field. When this character, cost 2. When this character or another allied character within 3 of this character, it can use the superpower. This character may reroll up to 2 of the attacker's dice. This superpower can only be used once per turn. So this is the same thing that Dynamo has, the Disruption Field ability, except I've tacked once per turn on it. I am recording this shortly after I recorded the Namor spoilers. I did not know that Namor would be the Time Gem bearer when I wrote this. While I would love Disruption Field and Shield, I don't know if that works or if that's okay on him, but oh well, I didn't want to come up with another awesome idea, and I like this one. So the reason we're doing this is because we want to keep that reroll dice theme. The Disruption Field is the very last step of modified dice, so it can give you that last minute, like really strong rewind in time, make things better for you feeling, while not actually stepping on the toes of any of the actual Eye of Agamotto characters that have like the built-in reroll effect from Eye of Agamotto. This might be way too good. You can build an incredibly tanky Thanos on it. It is limited to once per turn, and you have to pull the trigger on it before you see any of the dice rolled. So that's nice, but the very first attack against Thanos in 3 will make it bad. And like Thanos with this, there are very few attacks that are likely to deal damage to Thanos. So this may be like way too strong. But what is cool about it is that it is there are now 2 gems that you can buy that make your character more tanky. So I think that's really interesting. All right. With that, that's the end of the gems. What do you guys think? Did I do a good job rebalancing these? Do you want to see AMG rebalance the Infinity gems? I know that I do. What would you change? Put it in the comments down below. And don't forget that fun is a finite resource.